Are any of you guys reading Batman and Robin right now? Because the Quiet Man is amazing. Dude, he's like one of the greatest villains that I think I've ever seen in a Batman comic. Okay, so what this does is this initially picks up with a guy named Cy being released from prison. And the guy kind of seems to be on good terms with the cops, right? You know, we'll miss you around here. Do you got anybody coming to pick you up? And while it just kind of seems like one of those things of like, you know, we'll see you back here again because you're a criminal and criminals do bad things, that when he leaves, he gets a little hand-drawn picture, right? He gets his car keys, and then he actually just speaks in a whisper tone, right? He says, "You boys take care of yourselves," and they're just kind of like, "You too, Cyrus," and then he just kind of walks away. And in fact, one of the cops says, "Susan and I will be praying for you." So this guy is seemingly close with those cops out there, but then he ends up going to a graveyard, right, at a small little church, and digs up a grave. And when he does, he just kind of opens this box and finds some artifacts inside, right? A newspaper clipping that says "Fear Mob Boss dies in captivity." There's, of course, a kind of necklace. And then he just touches one of the graves and he says, "Love you forever, boy. Let's take one more trip together," and then walks away. At that point, you switch over to the Gotham Pier, right? And it's just stuff going on in Gotham City the way that you would expect it to. There's kind of like this display of firepower that's happening. And in fact, it's actually Tiger Shark, who's just kind of like, you know, "How do you guys like the new toys, gentlemen?" Right? Still think Penguin runs Gotham. And so it's effectively a turf war. Now, it is important to specify here, this story is taking place in the middle of the larger Batman and Robin mythos at the moment. So there's storylines like Memento and things like that that kind of came before this, but for the most part, it's not overly important. But Gotham's always in the midst of a turf war, so, you know, take it for what it is. But Batman ends up showing up here, and that's one of the crazy things is because Tiger Sharks just like kill him, and they literally open fire on Batman. Now, of course, Damian's here as well, but he's not quite active yet. Instead, Batman just says, "Batwing, target painted, rear rotor, electrical cannon, execute." And then, of course, fires off at the rear rotor of the helicopter. And so at that point, they're just kind of spinning blind. And so Damian's just like, "Now?" And Batman's like, "Nope, not yet." And once he gets inside the helicopter and just starts attacking everybody, he realizes that Tiger Shark is here. And so Damian's like, "Now?" And Bruce is like, "He's here, now." And Damian just like comes flying out on a bat motorcycle, and it looks amazing because he literally comes racing across the road and flies up into the helicopter. It's dope, right? Flying out of a warehouse window into a helicopter. It's the most Damian Wayne thing that you could possibly imagine. And he just tells Batman, right, "On your six." And Batman's like, "I saw him," right? And they're just kind of going back and forth, not really bickering, but like taking out all these guys. The funny thing about this is that the whole Batman and Robin shtick, as you could probably imagine, is just Batman and Robin working as a team in Gotham. But there's also like the father-son element to it, which is going to play somewhat of a role as we get further into this. But basically, like, Damian Wayne and Batman subdue Tiger Shark and basically just like take him away, haul him off to jail, and that's essentially that. After this, they do switch over to a bit of a father-son moment, which is when things get so dope with the Quiet Man. So they end up deciding to like go see a movie. Because one of the things that, again, the comic hits on isn't just the Batman and Robin element, it's how does Bruce Wayne as a father raise his son Damian and treat him like a son? Because historically speaking, most of you guys are aware of this, right? Historically speaking, when it comes to the Batman mythos, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, you oftentimes see him more as the Batman and Robin mentor figure than you do as like Bruce Wayne and a son or an adopted son. The fact that this is kind of being done with Damian is pretty phenomenal here. And so they essentially just kind of let their hair down, so to speak, and they end up just going to enjoy a movie together. When that happens, you switch over to the Penguin at the Iceberg Lounge, and the Penguin just says, "To the victor, the spoils. Pour one out for Tiger Shark, who should have known better," right? "Enjoy Blackgate Prison, Shark." And then he says, "And to our boy Polly, who showed us what he's made of through this war. Tiger Shark's turf is ours now, and I need a man that I can trust to run it for me. Give our newest underboss his props." And everybody here, right, is like, "To Polly Pool," you know, and everybody's kind of celebrating him. And Penguin says, "And finally, to the man who finally put old Shark away, always ready to answer an anonymous tip, the unsung hero of this crew, to the Batman." And they all celebrate. And so while Bruce and Damian spend their time in a theater, outside the Iceberg Lounge, the quiet man walks up, and this guard who's standing outside just says, "Private party tonight, keep walking." And the quiet man is just like, "I've been out of town for a while. Mr. Cobblepot still hold court here?" And the guy's like, "You just said the dumbest thing you possibly could have said. Get out of here while I still let you leave." And the quiet man just says, "You don't want to point a gun at me, son. Tell Mr. Cobblepot there's a man here to see him." And this guy goes to pull a gun, and Quiet Man takes him out like that. And Penguin's just like, what in the hell is going on? I mean, they hear the gunfire and all that. This guy gets thrown through a window. And so the Quiet Man just points a gun at this guy and just blows his head smooth off. And then everyone opens fire on this guy, right? And so at that point, it's just like, what in the heck? Penguin's just like, everybody get into the tunnels, out the back. Paulie, get your boys down there now. Take care of this guy. So Penguin basically escapes. At that point, the Quiet Man just grabs a rifle. He's got a handgun, and then he starts to say this prayer. And it's one of the dopest lines that I think I've ever heard. He says, "Rest easy, boys. I ain't angry with you." And he says, "Still my breath with steel, that I might rest after my life of toil. Cool my blood in earth, that my anger might be quelled. Bless mine eyes with silver, that I might watch for the Savior's coming. If I die today, let it be in penance for my sins, redeemed by the guns of holy men." It's amazing, dude. That's one of the coolest lines that I've ever heard in the world of comics. As soon as I saw that, I was like, dude, this guy is dope. Because the whole time he's saying this prayer, he is unloading on these guys, right? I mean, it's Old Testament, right? Fire and brimstone. I mean, the Lord's judgment came to the Iceberg Lounge tonight, son. It was an absolute massacre. So the guy torches the entire place. And so at that point, you switch over to the Penguin in the aftermath of it all, right? And the Penguin initially lashes out at Batman and Robin, right? You did this, right? If this had been a police precinct or the mayor's office or some poor man's home, you'd have been here. Where were you, right? I'm a citizen of Gotham. I pay taxes too. And of course, Batman stands up and looks at the Penguin with that Batman look, you know what I mean? The look that he gives where he's like, I'm in no mood to listen to this, right? I'm not having it, son, right? It's that's the tone, that's the look that Batman gives. And he just asks, "Who did this, Penguin?" And Penguin's just like, "You're asking me, right? You think I'm on a first name basis with every malcontent who wants to kill me? It could be anybody." And Bruce is just kind of like, "Anybody." And he's like, "Okay." "A man walks up to the front door of your headquarters unarmed, asking for you. When your man turns him away, the killer takes his gun, forces his way in, and shoots everyone he finds. And as the Iceberg Lounge is burning down around him, he takes the time to place silver coins on the eyes of the dead. I don't know what kind of man does that, but I do know who it's not. It is not anybody." You guys see what I'm saying? This story is amazing. It's absolutely incredible, right? And so Robin's just like, "Did you see anything?" And Penguin just kind of dismisses it, right? No, I didn't really see anything. But then one of his guys chimes in, right? And is like, "I was on the door last night. I heard him talking to the guy outside right before the shooting started. I was behind the bar. I didn't get a good look." And Robin's just like, "Then what can you remember?" And this guy says, "A tall guy, lean, wore a baseball cap, dressed like he was from the country maybe, like he'd just come from working outside. He was good though, exceedingly good," right? It was weird how good this guy was. Talking with one of those voices that you have to lean in to hear. He talked really polite, even when he was trying to kill us. And so Batman's just like, "I know you know who it was that did this, but I do not need your help, and don't get in my way." And so of course, Penguin kind of does, right? Because one of his guys, right, Paulie asks him, he's like, "I mean, is Batman right? Do you know this guy?" And Penguin just says, "Reach out to dense people, Paulie. Set a meeting for tonight. If this is who I think it is, it concerns both of us." Now, Damian Wayne does kind of bicker with Batman a little bit because of the fact that in Damian's mind, them going to the movie theater and taking a kind of reprieve allowed this sort of thing to happen. And while it's not the worst thing in the world that just some guy rolled in as a one-man army, right? Just one guy doing this and taking out the Iceberg Lounge, not a huge deal, right? But this could have been a mugging. It could have been a murder of an innocent person. It could have been the Joker and a bunch of people. And so from Damian's perspective, they don't have the luxury of being able to take off days or evenings or something like that. There's always danger in the city of Gotham, and something always needs to be responded to. But one of the things that Batman tells him is, no, right? I told you that I would be both a mentor and a father to you. And being a father to you means doing fatherly things. And so at that point, you switch back over to the quiet man, right? He's just kind of talking to himself and he says, Gotham ain't changed. Trash piled up on the street. Folks wrapping it up to keep warm. I haven't heard a bird or a cricket or the wind in a tree since I got here. I laid silver on 5 men last night and I didn't learn a damn thing. I'll try again tonight. And he says, I sure miss you, boy. I miss every age that you grew out of. I miss the ages that you never were. Maybe I'll be with you tonight. And so at that point, you switch back over to Batman and Damian investigating these coins they got that were left behind by the quiet man. And while Damian's kind of doing his training, right, fighting mannequins and so on and so forth, he asks Batman, right, like, what do you see? Did you find anything on the coins? And Batman's like, actually, I found a lot, right? There are old mold and wood particles on the coin, like it was kept in a box for an exceedingly long time, probably buried. And he says there's also a faint residue consistent with human decomposition. And he says the coin itself is also curious. It's an 1898 US silver dollar, sometimes called a justice dollar. Justice dollars are old, but not especially rare, unless they were made in the New Orleans Mint, as this one was. And Damian's just kind of like, why does it matter? And Bruce says a shipment of these coins was stolen in an 1898 train robbery in the Blue Ridge Mountains and never recovered. This coin alone is worth almost $25,000. And Damian's just like, Jesus. There's 5 bodies at the Iceberg Lounge. Who shoots 5 strangers and then leaves $250,000 worth of treasure in their eyes? And Bruce is like, that's the question. And he says, I left a microphone at the Iceberg Lounge this morning. Penguin thinks this has something to do with Two-Face. He could be to blame or he could be the next target. Penguin and Two-Face are having a meet tonight at one of Two-Face's hideouts. Stake out the Asher estate and I'll take the old courthouse. And Damian asks, right, I mean, do you think this guy is going to go after them again so soon? And Batman says, probably unlikely, but as you said, we let our guard down last night. That's not something that we can afford to do again. And so at that moment, you switch over to the Asher estate in Gotham, which is kind of interesting. We get this really, really cool, interesting explanation about it here in a second. But one of the things that happens is the Gotham Irregulars show up here. Now, if you don't know what the Gotham Irregulars are, honestly, they're newly introduced by Philip Kennedy Johnson during this run. They're essentially based on the Baker Street Irregulars from Sherlock Holmes, which is to say, they're essentially kids in the city of Gotham that give Batman information that he wouldn't be able to normally access on his own, right? Because as what are, by all standards of measurement, orphan kids, they live and breathe the streets of Gotham. They see everything. They hear everything. And so they can be the eyes and ears of both Batman and Robin. And Batman does have dealings with them to a degree, right? Sometimes he shows them things. Sometimes they show him things. Sometimes Damian Wayne teaches them stuff, right? It just kind of goes back and forth, right? You scratch my back, I scratch yours type thing. But at that point, you switch over to Two-Face when Penguin and his guys arrive. Now, of course, these guys are none too friendly with each other. I mean, they are as friendly as 2 rival mob bosses can be. In order to avoid mutually assured destruction, we don't attack each other. And so when Penguin's guys show up, right, it's actually one of the henchmen of Two-Face that Penguin initially meets, right? You know, headlights off, hands where we can see him. And he's just like, are you kidding? No guns? And Penguin's like, dude, I did not come all the way out here in the middle of God's nowhere to take lip from the help. Take me to your boss, right? And that's where Two-Face shows up and he's like, welcome to the Asher place. I don't guess that you ever met old man Asher. He's an old money millionaire, right? Big collector of Gotham artifacts and architecture. He let the collection pile up all over the estate. Some people might say that it looks like a scrapyard now, but honestly, I respect the duality. And so while Damian's kind of sidetracked with the Gotham Irregulars, Penguin continues on. He says, the hitter killed 5 of my men, Harvey. He didn't even bring his own gun. And Harvey's just kind of like, I should see if he's looking for work, to be honest. And Penguin just tells him, right, he left antique silver dollars in their eyes. Does that sound familiar? And that's where Two-Face is like the Falcone heist, right? That was a long time ago, Oswald. And Penguin just says, right, I looked into it. He was released 2 days ago. He's here, Harvey. And that's when you find out the Quiet Man's there. And this is yet another dope moment because he's just like, you're right about that. And as soon as everybody realizes he's there, Polly's just like, right, it's the guy, right? Like, get down, because they assume he's going to start opening fire on everybody. But they all basically order him to like get down on the ground. And Quiet Man just says, right, you two know you wronged me and mine, but I didn't come here for you. You know who it is that I want. Tell me where he is and I will go away. Try to protect him and I swear I will lay silver on every single one of you. And so in this moment, when Damian's kind of hanging out with the Gotham irregulars, he looks over and he realizes the Quiet Man is there. And so then, of course, he chimes into Batman and is like, our killer's here. And Batman's just like, en route, 40 seconds out from Southwest. And so then you switch back over, right? And Two-Face just says, you got good and close, old timer. I suppose that means my boys in the back gate are dead. And that's where Quiet Man just says, they didn't have to be, right? These boys here don't have to be either. Give up your friend, the one who killed my boy. And Two-Face just says, we were never friends. Besides, he's out of the game now, right? I'm confused why you're even talking like you're holding all the cards with the guns of a dozen violent men pointed at you. What exactly makes you think you're walking out of here? And Quiet Man just says, just the one thing. There ain't no dozen men who ever had what it took to kill me. And just like shoots down this clock that's hanging from this crane. It just like crashes on the car, right? And then just starts opening fire on everybody. And while he does that, he says that prayer yet again. If I die today, let it be in penance for my sins, redeemed by the guns of holy men. And there's a point where he's got Penguin dead to rights, and Batman swoops in and saves the Penguin. Not necessarily intentionally, but he saves the Penguin and goes after the Quiet Man. Now that's the crazy thing, is because in that moment, Robin's just like, don't pick up that gun. And Quiet Man just says, right, I'm not in the habit of shooting at children, son. And Damian gets kind of cocky. He's like, good, right? Then that'll make all this even easier. But in that moment, Quiet Man just looks around and says, Batman, you ought to be ashamed. Because as soon as Damian lunges at Quiet Man, he just cocks him out with one hit. Keeping in mind, Damian Wayne is a prodigiously trained assassin, right? He's one of the greatest assassins in the world. He gets taken out in one hit by this guy. And Quiet Man just says, bringing a boy into a man's quarrel. And Batman just says, right, I didn't ask for the judgment of a murderer. You killed 5 men. You don't get to walk away from that. And Quiet Man just says, walk away. He says, I'm here because you set loose the lunatic who killed my boy. You did that. I'll walk away when he's dead. And so Batman muses to himself, right? He says, the silver dollars, Penguin, Two-Face, the lunatic who killed my boy. He says, with that, I remember where I've seen this man before, from a cold case from years ago, and a murder that we couldn't make stick. And he says, he's after the Ventriloquist. Because at that point, you switch over to Arnold Wesker, and he's there with a woman who just says, that looks really nice, Arnie, right? What's it going to be? And Arnold just says, I don't know, right? I just asked the wood what it wants to be, and it tells me. And so jumping back to the fight between Batman, Quiet Man, Robin, Penguin, and Two-Face, that like Quiet Man tells Batman, right, I'm not here for you. I'm not even here for them. Give up Ventriloquist, and you won't ever see me again. But Batman's not the one to bend to those kind of demands. So the fight between the two is pretty intense. For every move that Batman's able to make, Quiet Man is able to make an effective counter move. Not enough to like overcome Batman entirely, but he's holding his own. And that's no small thing. You guys know that, right? Batman's one of the greatest fighters in the entirety of the DC universe. This guy being able to hold his own, that's kind of nuts. Because what Batman says is the Ventriloquist is an Arkham. And the Quiet Man's like, don't you lie to me. I'm entitled to a father's justice. Are you trying to stop that, right? Make me kill you in front of your own boy? Is that really what you're shooting for? What kind of a man are you? And where Robin is able to momentarily distract Quiet Man, the Gotham irregulars are kind of watching all that go down. And they're like, man, we gotta get Robin to teach us this kind of stuff. But one of the things that also happens is that Two-Face and Penguin's guys start opening fire again. And so there's this huge distraction, right? There's this giant, mannequin looking thing comes crashing down onto everybody. And so Batman and Robin are trapped under this. Quiet Man actually saves Robin by pulling him out. Batman's still stuck under all that stuff. While all that's happening, the Penguin's guys are opening fire at everybody. The Quiet Man is essentially taking him out. He grabs Robin. He's like, on your feet, kid. And Two-Face is like, Penguin, let's go. We got to get out of here, right? Penguin's just like opening fire with his umbrella, and they basically bolt. And so at that moment, the quiet man ends up walking away. But the last thing he tells Batman is he says, a boy should not be mixed up in foolishness like this. Let your old man dig his own grave, son, and just walks away. And so at that point, Batman jumps on to the horn and gets a hold of the woman who's there alongside Arnold Wesker, right? And when he chimes in, she's just kind of like, oh, it's my mom calling. And she kind of walks away for a second, and she's just like, yeah. And Batman says, Blair, someone knows Wesker's free. They will be coming for him. And she asks the question, how would anybody know? And Batman just says, just be ready to move him. I will be in touch. And so initially, Robin doesn't fully understand what's going on, right? He's like, why would the quiet man take the time to free me, right? And Batman just says, at the Asher estate, he said that he was after the lunatic who killed my boy. He said something similar during his trial. We never learned what he meant. And Damian is just like, what trial are you talking about, right? Like, do you know who this man is? And Batman says, I might. He says, something he said reminded me of a cold case from years ago, a mob shootout in a warehouse near the docks. 5 soldiers of the Falcone crime family were found shot to death, alongside one badly wounded army vet with no apparent reason for even being there. There were rumors that Two-Face and Penguin were involved, but all the dead mobsters were all on the payroll of either Carmine Falcone or Scarface. We never learned what happened in that warehouse. The crime families all played dumb, and the army vet hardly spoke a word from the stand, but he accused the ventriloquist of quote-unquote killing my boy. And so that's where Damian asks, right? Like, isn't the ventriloquist in Arkham? That's where he's supposed to be. And Batman says that's what the world thinks. The ventriloquist, Arnold Wesker, has received a clean bill of health. He's free. The guy had a mental breakdown and basically lost his identity and every other identity. He's a clean slate. And so because of that, because he didn't recall his own past, because there's no real violent tendencies, he's quite literally an old man out there in the world with no idea who he is. He was released from Arkham Asylum, but Batman kind of orchestrated him being moved to a safe house, and he's currently under the watch of a woman named Simone Blair, who's essentially Batman's eyes and ears, making sure that Arnold Wesker never reverts or relapses back into his old self again. And so the kicker about all this is that after Simone is informed that there are people who may very well be on the way to Arnold Wesker, she starts packing stuff up, right? She's like, if you need your notepad with all your numbers in it, it's in the backpack behind the counter. The little zipper pocket in the front. Your phone is in there too, right? I'm headed out, but I'll be real close. She almost kind of bails on him. But when she gets to the door and the place is supposed to be locked up, there's a couple of guys who walk in, right? Praise be. It's a miracle, right? This man has miraculously escaped from Arkham Asylum, only to find out that it's the Penguin's men. And when the Penguin's men get here, they come walking into this place alongside Two-Face and his guys. So quite literally, they all know where Ventriloquist is at. And when they get in there, they put a gun to this guy's head. The goal is to literally serve him up to the quiet man. And that's exactly what they do. At the Upper West Side in Gotham City, where there's basically a kind of safe house, right, where Penguin and Two-Face and those guys normally get up to no good, Quiet Man follows them there. He sees them there, and they just go inside. When it's become pretty obvious that they've spotted him, he follows them in, and when he gets in there, he finds a laptop from the Penguin, where the Penguin tells him, right, you've made yourself a proper hassle. I'd offer you a job if you hadn't killed quite so many of my boys. But he says, you're looking for a ventriloquist, aren't you? And he says, you win, Mr. Mountain Man. And he has the address written down for the ventriloquist location. And Penguin just says, go get him. And so with Robin and Batman now on the hunt to figure out what's going on with the Quiet Man, who this guy really actually is beyond speculation, as well as figuring out everything else involving this case, Robin ends up going with the Gotham Irregulars who actually show him where the Quiet Man's base of operations is, right, his headquarters. Damian Wayne ends up stumbling across a whole bunch of these letters that had been written to his son and letters that had been sent to him, while Batman tracks down Two-Face. And when Batman tells Two-Face, right, Cyrus Mercer took the fall for the warehouse shooting years ago, you and Penguin were implicated, tell me what happened, that Two-Face says one of Falcone's guys knew him from the army, said he used to be some kind of a badass. Mercer went to his buddy, said he had a fortune in silver that he'd sell for pennies on the dollar, worth $50 million easy. Falcone said that he would buy, but Penguin and I had spies on Falcone's crew. We were both planning to hit the joint, take the money, and bail. We decided to basically go in together, right? Because we didn't want to have to kill each other in the process. And he says what we didn't know was that Scarface heard about it too. We heard the shooting from outside. By the time we got in there, Mercer was shot. 5 mob guys were dead, and the silver was gone. When the shooting started, an old Falcone guy named Brazzi took off in Mercer's truck. All the silver was in the back. A car full of Scarface's guys went after him, and he says Scarface's car slammed into a wall on the Tri-Gate Bridge. Everybody dead inside. Mercer's truck never made it to Falcone's or anywhere else. The guy vanished. And Bruce kind of continues and says, and Mercer took the fall for the whole thing. And so when Damian Wayne kind of starts to figure out what's going on here, that Mercer's literally on a vengeance quest to avenge the death of his son, he starts to realize a couple things. One of which is that it's not that dissimilar from what Batman's doing, right? Batman's on a quest for vengeance due to the fact that his parents were killed in Crime Alley. So it kind of allows Damian to sort of see where the Quiet Man's coming from. And so when that goes down, he contacts Batman, right? And he says, look, I found the headquarters of the Quiet Man. There's all kinds of letters and stuff here, and there's a series of addresses. I don't know what they mean. Maybe you do, right? And Batman's like, okay, like, what does it say? And he's like, one of the letters says, Merry Christmas, 2538 Folsom Street, Burnside. And Batman's like, get to the address now. And Damian's like, why is that? And he's like, that's Wesker's address. Now, at that point, you switch over to Wesker and to Blair, right? Wesker and Blair are just kind of tied down to these chairs. There's nothing really going on here, but of course, they're captured, right? So they know like someone's going to be coming for them, even if Penguin and Two-Face left them there. And most likely, Penguin told them, like, there's a guy who's going to be coming after you, and he's going to kill you. We're just setting you up to get killed, right? Now, of course, Blair ends up wiggling herself free and then freeing Wesker. The problem is that when she looks out of the window, she sees the Quiet Man coming. And so he comes walking down this path in what turns out to be this just kind of little street store, right? On like a little innocuous area, right? Literally out in the suburbs somewhere or in an old part of Gotham. It's a pretty smart move by Batman. You would expect Wesker to be holed up in like some house out in the woods or something along those lines. But no, it's just a little storefront down in the basement. And so when Quiet Man gets in there, he starts poking around and he ends up discovering both Blair and Wesker hiding down in this little closet area. And when he looks down there, he's just kind of like, huh, right? It's a little strange what it is that he sees. And so at that point, of course, Batman and Robin show up there just in time to witness Paulie firing an RPG into the store and blowing the place to pieces. The idea being that Penguin could kind of take everybody out in one fell swoop. He could lure the Quiet Man to where Ventriloquist and Simone were at. He could take out Quiet Man and Ventriloquist and get this whole muss and fuss out of his hair, right? Just be done with it. It's actually a really smart move. Batman and Robin get in there and they just try to grab as many people as they can, right? Then Robin ends up grabbing Quiet Man and getting him out of there. And then Batman starts going to the house looking for Wesker and Blair. But the crazy thing is he gets into the closet where Wesker was hiding and he says, there's a body here. And he says, it's Blair. She didn't die in the blast. She's been dead at least a week. And Robin's just like, I mean, that's impossible. You spoke to her less than an hour ago. If Blair's dead, if she's been dead all this time, who have you been talking to? And that's when you pick up with Ventriloquist and Blair running through this street, right? Trying to escape. And Blair's just telling him, right? You know, we got to get out of here. I got a gig surprise for you, right? That's how Scarface talks. And he ends up passing by this guy who's sitting on these stairs, right? Talking to a woman on the phone. And he's like, no, you know, it was good though, right? Ricky told me that I did good. Next time I go in, it's just going to be me. And she's like, that's great, babe. Have you told your mom yet? And then the girl's like, are you with somebody? I thought I heard somebody talking. And he's like, no, it's nobody. Just some old guy talking to himself. Wesker is back to being Ventriloquist. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end because we got one issue left until this story finishes. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.